for that warm welcome. It's really good to be here in Birmingham to join your important conference. And I know since 1978, RenewableUK and its predecessors in the wind and marine sectors have been leading the way, making the case for the clean, green, sustainable way of powering our society. So it's great to be with you. Now, since 1978, I think it's been fair to say there's been some ups and downs for the renewable sector in the UK. But I would contend that this year, as the energy bill goes through Parliament, the prospects for renewable energy in the United Kingdom have never been better. This government is putting in place a long-term framework, a robust and stable framework for the transition to low-carbon energy, and I think it's the most robust framework the country has ever had. And it's not just aspirational targets and objectives, but it's a practical, comprehensive, legal, financial and political framework that provides industry and investors with the confidence, with the certainty and the predictability that you need if we are to meet the energy challenge that we face. With a fifth of our electricity generating capacity coming offline over the next decade, you'll have heard this figure before, but we need £110 billion of investment to keep the lights on. And as the latest report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change made crystal clear, if we are to make sure that keeping the lights on today does not mean that future generations have to pay the price in a hotter, more dangerous and volatile world, our energy use needs to be progressively carbon-free. So today I want to, above all, confirm and reaffirm the government's commitment to renewable energy. As a country, we have a huge amount to gain from leading the global clean, green energy revolution. Tens of thousands of jobs, reinvigorating local communities and bringing financial security to many families. Growth in the economy, with billions of pounds of investment reaching down through the supply chains to every part of the country, increasing tax revenues, boosting exports, benefiting local communities who embrace green power. Greater energy security, keeping the lights burning by increasing the use of homegrown natural resources of the country. And protecting bill payers, cushioning them from the increasing costs of volatile fossil fuel imports from riskier parts of the world, shielding our citizens over time from the rising price of competing for diminishing resources. And in the process, we will be cutting harmful greenhouse gas emissions so that we play our part in limiting climate change and live up to our responsibilities to future generations. This course we have set is a win, 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 win. Good for jobs, good for the economy, good for energy security, good for bill payers, and good for the environment too. But we will only realise this future if we stick to the long-term path we have set ourselves resolutely. And the framework we have put in place, including the financial support available, has already been extraordinarily successful. Today I published with my ministerial colleagues in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland the 2013 update to Renewable Energy Roadmap. And by any measure, progress has been impressive. Since 2010, £31 billion of private sector investment in renewable electricity has been announced, with the potential to support 35,000 jobs across the whole of the United Kingdom. And if you look at what that's meant over the last year alone, it's pretty impressive. A 56% increase in renewable electricity generation, including bioenergy up by 58%, offshore wind up by 51%, solar PV up by 22%, and onshore wind up by a breathtaking 70%. As of the second quarter of 2013, over 15% of the nation's electricity came from renewables, halfway to the objective of generating around 30% of our electricity from renewable sources by 2020. And my prediction, with the framework we are putting in place, will do even better than 30%. With a tripling of support available to low-carbon technology to 2020, agreed as part of the levy control framework, with the stable legal, financial and political framework that's in the energy bill, and with our commitment to delivering the renewable energy target. We are creating the most attractive electricity investment markets anywhere in the world. So let me make this crystal clear. There should be no doubt about the government's commitment to renewable energy as part of a cost-effective, low-carbon, secure and diverse energy mix. No doubt about the level of support available. But I'm equally clear, and I've been clear all the time since I've been Secretary of State, this revolution must remain affordable. Real energy security can only be achieved by delivering all these things at a cost that our people and our economy can afford. That is why, like many countries, the UK has put in place measures to ensure our energy-intensive industries are supported through the transition to a low-carbon economy in line with state aid rules. And it's why we keep under continuous review the impact that our domestic green policies are having on energy bills. But let me reassure you, as clearly and unequivocally as I can, the current review is not about changing investment incentives for renewables, such as the renewable obligations, contracts for difference, or the feed-in tariff scheme. The levels of support will remain as planned and as published. These are essential for investor confidence in the renewable sector and our commitments to a low-carbon economy. The review is looking at what I call the social green levies, warm home discount and the energy company obligation. For we do need to make sure that support is paid for in a way that is fair to consumers. Is it right to help the fuel poor via the bills of the nearly fuel poor? But even on these social green levies, I am clear, we will not cut energy bills on the back of the fuel poor. So with the government's commitment undiminished, the challenge for the renewables industry is one you're familiar with and one you've already made real progress in meeting, attracting investment, building capacity, and crucially, bringing costs down. I've set out how successful we have been in the first of these two, and there is much more detail in the roadmap that we've published today. So let me dwell for a minute on the last of these three challenges, bringing costs down. Public support for renewables remains very high. The latest DEC research published today confirms that over 3/4 of people continue to support the reuse of renewables to power our society. But people remain significantly concerned about steep rises in energy bills, now and in the future. So there is an imperative to demonstrate that the vision of a competitive market that keeps bills as low as possible is not a fantasy, but it is within our reach. And that means a market where renewables and other low-carbon technologies increasingly participate on a level playing field. Now, renewable energy is still more expensive, megawatt for megawatt, than other conventional technologies. This is normal for a developing industry. Indeed, we expect it. Our policies assume it. But nobody, least of all you in the industry, should expect that subsidies will remain for one moment longer than necessary. Ultimately, renewables must reach grid parity in a world where carbon is properly priced. The government is meeting its end of the bargain by providing a market that can deliver investment. The industry needs to continue to meet its end of the bargain by bringing costs down. And the evidence that you're doing that is very encouraging. There's been a reduction of almost 3/4 in raw solar PV costs over recent years. Support rates needed for onshore wind have reduced by 10% this year. And the offshore wind industry has set out a clear pathway for cost reduction. But we will still need to see further cost reductions, and we need to see them as quickly as possible. This means a real commitment to innovation, improving the affordability of existing technologies, and working to make sure that new technologies are commercially deployable in as short a time as possible. Successful innovation could save the UK up to £160 billion in energy supply costs to 2050 and generate UK-based business activity contributing up to £89 billion to GDP over the same period. These are big numbers. But let me get beneath them and take example of one sector, the example of offshore wind. The UK, of course, is the offshore wind world leader. We have the most offshore wind deployed anywhere in the world and the most clarity for investors. This year alone, we've seen the Greater Gabbard, London Array, Links and Teesside farms completed. And we are now giving consents under new Planning Act regime with a go-ahead for the Kentish Flats extension, Galloper and Triton Knoll projects. It was just yesterday that Vattenfall announced its plans to invest around £150 million in the Kentish Flat extension, with construction beginning in 2015. So I'm absolutely determined to ensure that the UK retains its global lead in this sector, and we've set out the framework to achieve that. Contracts are for the long term. Prices are visible. And we have confidence that the industry can deliver our shared vision. In our draft delivery plan, we set out a range of 8 to 16 gigawatts by 2020. But I know that some have concerns that our ambition is limited to the low end of that range. So let me tell you clearly, that is not so. Far from it. Working together, I am confident that we can deliver towards the higher end of this range, particularly if costs continue to fall. Offshore wind will be a crucial part of our energy mix well beyond 2020. Our draft delivery plan set out a scenario showing that up to 39 gigawatts of offshore wind could come on by 2030. Together, we should be aiming to deliver the cost reductions that will enable that. Now, I understand the concerns that have been raised on the support package for offshore wind, in particular the draft strike prices. We are taking your responses into account as we work to finalise the EMR delivery plan. And price is only one part of the whole package we're working on to ensure delivery of offshore wind projects. As you know, we published a draft contract earlier this year, including a range of measures to make offshore wind more investable. You should look very closely at what those proposals mean for your projects and for the strike prices they can access, including phasing, commissioning windows, and capacity adjustments. We are finalising those contract terms with the aim of making sure that the new system works for the complex, multi-year processes that are involved in developing offshore wind farms. So my request to you today is work with us to find the solutions which enable a healthy pipeline of projects to be delivered. And it's not just delivering cost reductions, but helping to build a supply chain that will deliver the economic benefits to the UK that we seek. This summer, I went with the Prime Minister to open London Array to celebrate the milestone of the world's biggest wind farm. There I met some of the young apprentices who are now embarking on a career in the offshore wind industry. And their excitement, their enthusiasm was palpable, and it was certainly inspirational. And we want to see more young people, more apprentices, as the industry expands. And UK consumers who are paying to support these technologies do expect benefits to stay in the UK in the forms of jobs and investment. And of course that means a critical role for investing in innovation. Technology innovation analysis highlights that by 2050, in the offshore wind industry alone, innovation has the potential to deliver cost savings of £45 billion and business creation for the UK worth £18 billion. So we need to do everything we can to stimulate that investment. And the government is trying to lead on that. Whether it's the offshore wind cost reduction task force, which we worked with the industry on, whether it's Catapult, whether it's the industrial strategy that Vince and I launched earlier this year, we've sought to identify with you a whole range of innovations to realise that innovation opportunity. And that's why I'm pleased to announce today another part of government funding, £2.5 million to 4 projects under the Offshore Wind Component Technologies Scheme. This scheme, one of a number, aims to help companies to test and demonstrate devices and to develop component technologies that can cut the costs of offshore wind energy in the run-up to 2020 and in the subsequent decade. This is part of a package of support being provided by members of the Low Carbon Innovation Coordination Group, who together are providing over £100 million of targeted financial support to develop innovative offshore wind technologies between 2011 and 2015. And these people are getting results. Now, I'm determined to see a successful, flourishing offshore wind industry here in the UK. I am particularly committed to onshore wind. Our onshore wind industry continues to thrive, with 1.5 gigawatts installed so far in 2013 alone. That brings us to nearly 7 gigawatts installed, with 1.25 gigawatts under construction and another 5 gigawatts consented. It is a huge success story, and we should be proud of what has been achieved. And of course, onshore wind is one of our cheapest large-scale renewables. Now, we all know there's been controversy about onshore wind, but I'm pleased that the industry has been thinking seriously about how to make sure that developments are built with the support of local communities. Community benefit packages are becoming the norm across the industry, and they are popular, not least when they help people with their energy bills. So I'm delighted that RenewableUK is today launching its new community benefit protocol with a 5-fold increase in community benefit levels. You are to be congratulated for that. But it's the individual stories that I think need to be told more. I recently visited Vattenfall's huge Cymoedd project in South Wales. It's a great example of some creative thinking about how to make sure that local businesses can win contracts. And it was the strong community backing for what will be the largest onshore wind farm in England and Wales that I found truly fantastic. I met a miner's son working on the construction. He told me that his family was pleased that he was working above ground, helping deliver clean energy for Wales. It was a great story. But we need to hear such stories of local investment and young people, and we need to hear them being told around wind farm developments up and down the country, how they're supporting local businesses and creating local jobs. And getting communities on side does mean making sure that wind farms are built in the right places. That's why we issued new planning guidance, making clear that the National Planning Policy Framework already includes strong protections for the natural and historic environment, and already shows that proper weight must be given to landscape and heritage. And it's right that government continues to monitor decisions carefully, to reassure communities that their concerns are being addressed, and that decisions are taken in line with existing guidance. Because we all know that planning works best when communities have the opportunity to influence decisions. This industry best practice will become even more widespread when we legislate to introduce compulsory pre-application consultation later this year. Now, looking into the future, marine energy has great potential as a clean source, green source of power. And it could make a contribution to UK electricity demand in the next decade as part of the mix, playing a major role as we move towards 2050. The UK is one of the leading nations in the development of marine energy, and we are putting money behind our commitment. We will be investing £80 million in marine energy over the spending review period. Together with the Scottish Government, we are working with developers towards final closure for the deployment of the first tidal arrays. We are also working with the key players in the industry to address the non-financial barriers in the market. The marine sector is making progress, but there is much more still to do. Large manufacturers, the innovative developers, and the utility investors need to get behind our first commercial arrays, and together we can get the marine sector moving. So let me conclude by saying this. At the start of my speech, I said that the prospects for the UK renewable sector are better today than at any time in the past. The legal, financial and political framework is being put in place for sustainable delivery, providing stability and certainty for many years to come. From ROs to FITs, from CFDs to the levy control framework, these are British financial systems and commitments investors can rely on. While the focus is, of course, on the big investment decisions, I'm delighted that small-scale renewables are thriving too, bringing home to local people that they can be more than just consumers of energy, but producers too, and soon we'll be publishing our community energy strategy. But I'm delighted that public support for renewables remains so high. But together, we cannot take that for granted. You, the industry, needs to consistently demonstrate its efforts to bring costs down as it brings forward the investment we need. We need to continue to engage with local communities, showing how the benefits of hosting renewable infrastructure can be significant. Working together, we can meet these challenges. So, colleagues, I am very proud of what we've achieved, what you've achieved. But I know we can and will do much, much more here and abroad. Your industry is critical to the growth strategy of the government, the green growth agenda our country needs, short-term and long-term. Your success is already showing what is possible, but let's do more. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thanks. Well, Secretary of State, thank you so much. Very, very inspiring, very encouraging. I just want to pick up on 2 points, and I have to be very brief. Secretary of State has a train to catch, so we'll be very limited for time. But I'm sure I heard you say that we can, that there is an aspiration for 39 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030. I just wanted to say that out loud in case anybody missed it, because it is the first time I've actually heard it said out loud in public. So
this is one of our documents.
That is really very encouraging. I'm sure our offshore wind segment will be most encouraged by that, to say nothing of the investor community. And I'm really pleased that you also remembered onshore wind, because it is vitally important that in the interval between now and big-scale deployment of offshore, that we deploy as much onshore as we possibly can. It is the solution that we have available to us today. And, of course, not to forget small and medium, where we're actually a leading manufacturer worldwide as well. So, is that Seb Kennedy I can see over there? Actually, could I have the lights up, please? It will be easier because we're a little blinded by the lights at the back. And again, I've noted the second question over there, and I really need you to keep the questions nice and brief, please. Seb, do you want to start off?
Hi, Seb Kennedy, Renews. Secretary of State, do you recognise that the substantial call-ins of wind farms by DCLG is having a significant cooling effect on investment in new wind farms in particularly England, and it's undermining DEC's overall aspirations for delivery of new capacity?
Thanks for the question. To take it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the call-ins, I wouldn't describe them as substantial. That clearly there have been a number of call-ins. But as I said in my remarks, the call-ins are judged by the existing planning guidance. And therefore, I think, given that we've confirmed those and helped clarify those, I don't think the industry has anything to fear from this. And part of our discussions across government was to make sure that that was the case.
Thank you. And gentleman on the microphone over there, could you tell us who you are, please?
Yeah, I'm Stuart Dorby. I'm the editor of oilbarrel.com and a contributing editor of greenbarrel.com, two energy websites and conference businesses. My question is this. You have said that decarbonising the economy does not come without cost, and that any developing industry needs to be supported. A new element has entered the equation here, and namely the shale gas phenomenon. Now, there are many gnarled old geologists who tell me that it's never going to work in the UK the way it has worked in the States. There are also environmental concerns and political problems with Tory seats. Be that as it may, David Cameron and the government does seem to think this is a get-out-of-jail-free card, and they are going to pursue shale, development shale in this country. My question to you is this, Secretary of State: how will pursuing a shale revolution, if you like, in this country affect the economics of renewables?
Thank you for the question. I almost feel like saying I refer my honourable friend to the speech I gave in the Royal Society in September, because I set out what I think the role of shale is and the potential for shale. And I don't think it's going to undermine the economics of the renewable sector at all. I mean, gas is going to play a role as we decarbonise over the next 15, 20 years on any analysis. And it's going to do that because so much of our generating capacity is coming off in a very short time, particularly, of course, a lot of coal's coming off. So we're going to be using a lot of gas, of course, in our heating, as well as some electricity generation. And the question is, where's that kind of gas going to come from? At the moment, the gas from the North Sea is declining, so we're importing a lot more gas than we used to just a few years ago. And that's coming from pipelines from Norway, pipelines from continental Europe, and it's coming on ships, LNG being shipped in from Algeria, but particularly from Qatar around the Straits of Hormuz. And most analysis suggests that if we do manage to produce shale gas in this country, it's still an if we do, in any sizable quantities, it will be replacing the marginal bit of gas that's being imported, the more expensive bit of gas, which will almost certainly be the LNG. So it's not actually, shale gas story is about energy security, not price. And it's about making sure that we have sufficient gas supplies. We're not having to increasingly import more and more and more gas to meet the needs that we're going to have to meet with gas, whether we like it or not. So I think there may be some people, I don't think they're in government, I think they're outside and couldn't possibly be in some parts of industry, not this industry, who are obviously wanting to talk up the shale gas story. And I'll be honest with you, if the shale gas story is a good story, if it turns out to be right, I think that's good for the country. But I don't think it's a threat to this industry at all. I mean, when you look at the energy needs of the country, we're going to need lots of different forms of energy and lots of different forms of cleaner energy because our energy needs are going to be so vast.
I agree. I'm coming to David Blunt from Gamesa, and I see you standing at the microphone, but I think it's unlikely we're going to get your question. I've got to get Secretary of State off the platform in about 3 minutes' time. David.
Well, very quickly then, Secretary of State, thanks for coming up HS1 to Birmingham and giving us these encouraging and strong messages, and there's not a political comment in there. Quickly, this morning we heard that one of the reasons that onshore wind is at grid parity in Brazil is because land prices are much cheaper and consenting processes are very much quicker. You referred in your remarks just now to the importance of planning. Absolutely share that. The question really is, do you think there's a prospect of being able to accelerate these planning processes so that we can get away from 3, 4, 5, 6 year consenting processes to enable developments to go forward, not just for new developments, but I'm thinking too of the all-important repowering that the sector will be facing in the coming years? Thank you.
Well, I'm very open to advice about how you think that might be possible. One of the ways that I think it's possible actually is through what we're proposing to do, which is mandatory pre-application consultation. Because if you look at the best practice in the industry, where they do engage the communities really early on, that can get away of and dispel some of the myths and rumours that sometimes get going. It's not always perfect, I know. I've seen it in many planning applications in my own constituency that even if the developers engage incredibly well, still those rumour mills happen. But I do think that will be one way of developing best practice. And when we develop things like the Community Benefit Register, where communities can see what other communities have got through the community benefit protocols and packages, that actually that will begin to turn the tide, and people will see not only that their views are being taken into account by early discussion, but they'll see that there's something in it for them. So I think that's the way forward, to work with communities and incentivise communities.
Okay. One last question, and I have to warn you, I will cut you off if it gets too long, so make it very short.
Theo Holton, Wind Farm Analytics. And it's great to hear again that Britain is, the UK is #1 in offshore wind. So I think we can do everything, we should do everything we can in order to support aligned industries. And I'm thinking here of energy storage, because obviously offshore wind, as onshore wind, suffers from variability, and indeed we are curtailing wind farms right now. In future this is likely to increase with 39 gigawatts. So energy storage is technology available right now to solve this problem, and it's all homegrown, sustainable, etc. Thank you.
Well, I agree with you. Energy storage is very much part of our thinking. While there are some storage technologies, I think you'll also agree we need to develop them more. We need lots of innovation and R&D in the energy storage sector. We put some money in to support a lot of the innovation there. And you may or may not be aware, but we've been discussing capacity markets, which is a way of ensuring we have enough power stations on the system later on in this decade when so much is coming off. And that's both on the supply side, which gets all the attention, but it's also on the demand side and on the storage side. We're looking at incentivising through auctions some storage technology to come on faster than otherwise would have done. So storage is part of the piece. Some way to go before it's a very big part of the piece, but I think it needs to mature as renewable technologies mature as well. It's very complementary. Well, do write in. I think you'll find we are working in that area. I'm sure there's more that we can do, and we're very up for that.